Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or of course, if you're watching on our rapidly growing YouTube channel, we're getting close to 10K, AJ. Getting close to 10K. I got to throw that in there pretty early for you guys. That is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, it seems like time really flies when you're in this profession, man, because spring practice is just right around the corner. Spring football practice beginning on Tuesday, March 1st for the Tar Heels officially. I know you talked to Mack Brown, heard from Mack Brown, had about an hour-long press conference on Tuesday, earlier on Tuesday afternoon, where he kind of sat down and talked to him. We went through a whole bunch of stuff in terms of his team, where the program's at, some offseason changes, spring practice coming up, which is obviously, if you've clicked on this video, what you're here to hear about. So we're going to be hitting on 5 things to look out for in spring practice this year for Carolina. But before we do that, I want to shout out our sponsor for this podcast, The Rogue Shop. You can check them out at therogueshop.com. They specialize in top shelf family grown hemp products. So CBD, Delta 8, Delta 9, whatever you're into, tinctures, oils, gummies. They've even got some candies, different products like that. Check them out. I finally got my hands on some free samples as well. Really high quality stuff. You've been talking about the rub, the kind of the oil you can put on, you can put on your shoulder, the cream. And I know that's been helping you out.
I can do this and I'm not screaming in pain.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks ago, I don't know what happened, but I walk around like Igor. I couldn't lift my shoulder or anything like that. And I said, you know what? I haven't tried it. I got a sample pack a while ago when we brought them on as one of our sponsors. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and try the cream. And I rubbed it on there. I swear 15 minutes later, I could move it a little bit. It was a little bit looser. I probably used it about 8 times, and my shoulder's not great because something's wrong there, but it's a lot better than it was. And when I do use it, sometimes I use it before going to bed, and it doesn't wake me up in the middle of the night like it has in the past. So it absolutely works. It's
good stuff. I've used some of the CBD stuff they showed me. My fiance actually stole the cream from me and started using that a little bit. She's vouching for it too. She says it's working big time. So I know.
And Kevin Roy, and if anybody knows who Kevin Roy is, he's one of our photographers. Yeah, it's really hard to please Kevin. Like nothing pleases Kevin, but he likes the stuff. He got a sample from Richard like 2 months ago, and then he placed $100 order like 3 weeks later.
I get it, man. I'm close to doing the same. I'm telling you.
If Kevin likes it, then quite frankly, everybody should buy it.
Exactly. That is a fact
to have it just in case it's got a long shelf life. We're really pitching this stuff pretty hard right now, but it does work.
It does. I'm telling you, it does.
I wouldn't accept a sponsor if we don't use it. If it's a product, we don't use it.
No doubt. So. I'm the same way. I'm glad I got my hands on it. Really good quality stuff. Even looking at it, it really is specialized, top shelf, family grown, the way it's packaged and everything like that too. So make sure you guys check them out. You can use the promo code TARHEELS10 to save. Link to therogueshop.com is in the description below. But AJ, first thing I want to hit on, like I mentioned, Tuesday, March 1st, the first day of spring practice. The first thing I want to hit on, the first thing that I want to really talk about and focus in on with this one is injuries. That was a big part of what Mack Brown ran through in his Tuesday press conference, just talking about some guys that will be out of spring ball, some guys that will also be limited in spring ball. I'm going to go ahead and run through the list. If I'm missing anybody, AJ, that comes off the top of your head, let me know. But I'm pretty sure I got everybody in here I was not all in the press conference, was able to listen back to it.
There are a lot of names.
A lot of names.
I have 11 pages of notes.
I believe it.
With Mac.
And the injuries weren't like in one list. It was kind of spread out through like a 5-minute segment. So you had to really search for it and look in there. So guys that are out of spring ball, you got Kendrick Bingley-Jones, Jaleel Taylor, Gio Biggers, Jaquarius Conley, who obviously got injured late in the season last year, Kamon Rucker, Rava Hosick, Day Hollins, and Kendall Carr. Those are the guys that are out for spring ball. Will not see those guys. Limited Don Chapman. He's going to be limited at first, so he will be back at some point during spring ball, but at first will be fully, I should say, but will be limited at first for the Tar Heels. Got Storm Duck limited as well. Ethan West and Tamari Fox, another guy that will be limited during spring ball.
Did you say Gio Biggers?
Yes, did say Gio Biggers as well.
And also Wyatt Tunnell and Trey Zimmerman have taken.
There you go. Those are the two ones as well. Wyatt Tunnell.
So they're both offensive linemen. Both offensive linemen. Zimmerman really never got up off he never really got going, I guess. I mean, we haven't heard much about him. Tunal was making a lot of progress. He was developing and then had the injury. I guess it was in fall camp last year. So they lost 2 of their younger linemen, and they brought in a couple of grad transfer linemen. So they're replenishing with older guys. So they really need some of these young offensive linemen to develop, because they're going to lose a lot of dudes on the offensive line after this season. So they need to get some guys developed big time. Because you also have the other older guy. You got, Austin Richards, and you got Montilus and William Barnes. You got a lot of old guys in that offensive line. And Brian Anderson, don't forget about him, who's, by the way, healthy and rolling. So losing Tunal and Zimmerman means they're going to have to pick up some more linemen.
Yeah, most definitely. And flipping over to looking at that list, when you look at it, it's kind of wild to look at, because 95% of that list are defensive players. Really, the only guy that doesn't play defense, Kendall Carr. And I believe that's it, looking at the list that I've currently got in front of me, in terms of it's all defensive guys for the most part. You obviously mentioned Tunal and Zimmerman, so another
Justin Olsen.
Olsen as well.
Mac mentioned Justin Olsen. I don't know what extent his situation is, but Mac said, look, that's a great opportunity for some of the like J.J. Jones as an example. I think that was the first player he mentioned. So, and Olsen ended up getting 70 reps a game, basically, last half of the season. So
he did play well.
Him being and he needed, they all need to be there. But if any others pop into my head when we're doing those, I'll just shout out the name for you.
I'm telling you, man, the list was like pretty spread out and pretty long, for lack of a better word. But it's just one thing I want to kind of talk about with that is, like I said, a majority of this list is on the defensive side of the ball. You've got a new staff coming in defensively with Chizik and Warren. Do you think is that something maybe a little bit of concern, just because you do have guys that did play a lot last year, big time players, Geo Biggers, Conley, Vahasik, just to name a few. Rucker played a lot. Jaleel Taylor played some as well. You've got a list in there of guys in on the limited side, Chapman and Storm Duck, Tamari Fox as well. You've got a list of guys that played a lot of snaps last year and will either be missing the entirety of spring ball or will be limited for a majority of it, or at least during the beginning. Is that a cause for concern? Because I know injuries are a part of spring practice, but when you look at just how extensive it is on the defensive side of the ball, is that anything maybe to be concerned about if you're Carolina?
Well, anytime guys aren't participating, it's a little bit of a concern, because they need reps. They all need reps. So, but I'll tell you, if it was the prior scheme being introduced to these kids now, I would say that's a bigger issue, because there was a lot more involved in that scheme. By bringing in Gene Chizik and Charlton Warren, they've simplified. So it's going to be easier for these kids to get the mental reps. They need to learn the terminology. They need to watch film and understand what their role is in their position. They need to watch their position live in practice. And most of the kids that are out are kids that have already played a lot. They can adapt quickly, and I think they'll be fine. I think not the value, but there is a benefit from having some guys out, in the sense that they need to see some more of these kids. They need to see the younger guys. Max said today that they need to see what a lot of these young defensive backs can do. They need to watch Tymir Brown. They need to watch some of those kids and give and see how they might be able to help this coming season. And if you had all the regular dudes back playing, maybe they wouldn't get as many reps. So I think they can benefit from that. There's always a silver lining in football. You hear guys say it sounds trite in some respects, but when one guy goes down, it's someone else's opportunity. So it's opportunity for the players to get important reps. It's also an opportunity for the staff to see what they can do. I think maybe the one big drawback to me would be Chizik and Warren not having hands-on time coaching kids that are going to be the main ones implementing the defense on the field next year. They're going to be the ones out there. And when you have new coaches, you want to establish that chemistry. You want to get that on-field relationship going. So they'll lose a little bit there, but these are pretty smart guys. These are experienced guys. I don't think it's going to be that big an issue. If it was a situation where, say, Noah Taylor and Chris Collins, who are both, going to be battling for the starting role at the jack linebacker, that's new terminology, and you could say adios to the hybrid, it's an outside linebacker job. If they weren't available, I think that would be a bigger issue, because that's going to be the one new position in a sense that they have, or the new rush end position that Desmond Evans is going to play, that Javar Ritzy's going to play. But those guys are going to be out there. So I don't think it's that big a deal. I really don't. As long as they understand the terminology, as long as they understand what the job is, they're going to have plenty of time to figure it out And once they're healthy and even get into fall camp, that'll be plenty of time, because Gene Chizik is about simplifying. It's about handling your role and responsibility, winning your individual battles. We talked about that last fall all the time, Jacob.
Yeah,
that they were over schemed at times. It wasn't always just about you doing your job. Guys were worried about other guys doing their job. Sometimes they didn't know who was going to do what job because of the problems with communication. So by simplifying it and dumbing it down, for lack of a better term, I don't think it'll be that big of an issue.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff, Edge. And this is a perfect segue into the second thing I kind of want to hit on to look out for in spring practice. And that's some of the defensive changes that we will see and that will be implemented, obviously, before the season starts later this year. Mac, I thought Mac had some good quotes in his press conference and was, pretty straightforward with his criticisms, for lack of a better word, of last year's teams, or his critiquing of last year's team and how it kind of went down. And one thing he said about the defense that I thought was interesting, to quote him, is he wants to get back to playing with an edge, an intensity, and a confidence. He said that was something Carolina just didn't do on the defensive side of the ball last year enough. He also talked about personnel, trying to figure out with Chizik and Warren, where did these guys fit in? Because obviously the scheme in which you mentioned, some of the recruits that Jay Bateman brought in, we've seen some guys leave in the transfer portal because they did, I think, for lack of a better word, their position that they would have played under Bateman really wasn't there anymore. So they're looking to try to figure out where guys can fit. Can they get them in there early, evaluate how they look throughout the spring, obviously throughout fall camp and summer as well, and then see what they can do during the season. So that's something else they're evaluating as well. One other thing I want to hit on, a few other things real quick I want to hit on, is some of those name changes to some of the positions that you already mentioned. You mentioned the jack position now. Guys like Chris Collins, your Bo Atkinses, your Gabe Stevens are all going to get look-ins there. You now got your power ends, is what they're referring to as kind of your D ends. Jahvaree Ritzie, your Des Evans, is those guys that are going to play the power end position, is what they are calling it. And then you got your three techniques, is what Mac referred to it as well, which is kind of your defensive tackles, so your Miles Murphys, your Travis Shaws. So you're seeing some terminology, change as well, which you expect when you bring in a new defensive coordinator and a new scheme altogether. So AJ, what kind of maybe stood out the most to you from listening to Mac Brown on Tuesday on the defensive side of the ball and some of the changes that you'll see starting to be implemented in spring practice here shortly?
Well, you just said some of it. I think identifying players' strengths and then using them to their strengths. With the previous scheme, that wasn't always the case. I never was a big fan of 260-pound guys being a quote-unquote hybrid. I never understood why you need to have a hybrid in a situation like that. I get the concept. And wow, this might be an amazing thing. Jay Bateman's way ahead of his time. And there are levels of football where it works. And maybe if you're rolling 4- and 5-star guys out there everywhere, it does work, right? Because some teams actually use that hybrid stuff. But you need to have the ability to rush the passer really for any of that stuff to work. If you're going to have a 260-pound guy in coverage, you better be going after the quarterback. And they didn't do that enough last year. It wasn't very consistent. They got some sacks, but they didn't consistently apply pressure. Opposing quarterbacks consistently were able to go through their progressions, and they need to disrupt that more. So what I'm reading right now, and we'll have a chance to see him practice next week, and we'll be into a few more during spring, and we'll hear the kids talk about it. But I kind of like the fact that this is the defense that's based more on winning your individual battles. The jack linebacker has a responsibility. Go out and execute your responsibility. The power end, they said that they think Des Evans could be an elite pass rusher. So you stick him on the end and say, become an elite pass rusher. Don't have him trying to cover a wide receiver 30 yards downfield. I think they're going to play to guys' strengths. Mac even said, brought up Rara, said, look, Rara is a football player. You got to get Rara on the field at times. There might be situations where his strength plays exactly to what we need on the field at that situation. So with their intent on getting 22 kids on the field in a game defensively, they're going to find ways to use these kids. They're going to play them to their strengths. And I think that this kind of defense is more suitable for finding the strengths of the kids and sticking, square pegs into square holes, not square pegs in a round hole. We saw that at times before. So that's the thing that really jumps out at me. And, Ray Vohasek kind of gave us a teaser on that a couple of weeks ago, but Mac really confirmed it on Tuesday when he kind of went through it. And I like the fact that they've got Ritzie out there. People look at Ritzie and say he's enormous. Well, but he's a power end guy. And you know what? His body and everything might translate to that role in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
And they have true nose guards now. I've always been a fan of the nose guard. I'm a little old school, and I think this defense, they may not like me saying this, but it's a little more old school in the sense that it's just win your battles, man. Mm-hmm. Win your battles. You got to do it in front of you. Whip them at the line of scrimmage. If you win that battle, and enough guys win their battles every snap on a consistent basis, you're going to make plays. You're going to stop the other team. You're going to put them in third and longs. You're going to force them to have to make plays themselves. And when you stress the offense like that, you're going to be successful, because Mac was very clear Tuesday when he said, for us to be great, the defense has to be great. The defense has to get a lot better than it's been, because they had an elite offense the last 3 years, and they went 21-17. So the offense they need to improve elements of the offense that we're going to talk about in a minute. But the offense, as it has been the last 3 years, should have won a lot more games. With an average defense, would have won a lot more games. So that's the quest here.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball, AJ. Third thing to look out for during spring practice is the offensive changes that, you'll obviously see during spring ball, as you would every year. Obviously, we'll hit on the QB battle a little bit later in this podcast. But, avoiding sacks, that was a big thing for the Tar Heels last year. Pass blocking was just, horrendous at times last year. You've lost a few guys on the offensive line as well that have moved on to, trying to go to the next level. So you're going to have to replace those guys. Mac hit on in the press conference as well, talking about scoring more touchdowns in the red zone, being able to capitalize on that instead of trading it for field goals, which I've watched some college football games, not as many as you have in my day, AJ, but a lot of the times when you don't get those touchdowns and instead you kick field goals, 8 times out of 10, it comes back to haunt you. So scoring more touchdowns in the red zone is another thing that Carolina's going to continue to work on and continue to focus on. He hit on the running back position a lot too. He said he's just got a plethora of guys at that position now, with Omarion Hampton, George Pettaway coming in. You got a ton of returners in that position as well. Obviously Ty Chandler moving on, but you've got a really, really deep list of running backs for Carolina that they've got to siphon through and figure out. Obviously, like I mentioned, the QB battle, which we'll hit on a little bit later, is going to be kind of the biggest thing that many Tar Heel fans are watching in terms of the whole team. But what were some of the biggest standout maybes that stood out for you during Mac's press conference in terms of some of the things he's trying to implement on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, kind of what they're talking about on defense, putting guys in position to play to their strengths. I love what he said about Bryson Nesbitt.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep.
Look, I'm not saying it because she's my friend and she works for us, but Dina King knows what the hell she's talking about. And when she texted me 2 years ago from a camp, or almost 2 years ago from a camp during the pandemic, some 7-on-7 camp, and she's saying Bryson Nesbitt can play wide receiver. He can run any route. He's a tight end body, but he can run any route, and he is nimble enough, quick enough, darting enough, agile enough to run stuff. So what did Mac say today? They're looking at putting him in some slot. So you're talking about a linebacker or a tight end size kid playing in some slot. He's a guy that needs to be on the field. If he doesn't have to play tight end all the time, he can play all over the place. You just need to put him out there and use him. I like that. I think that shows that they're looking at being creative. They like Phil Longo's air raid. There's a lot of wonderful things to like about it, but why not tweak? Keep tweaking. You should never stand still. You've always got to move forward in football because everybody's doing the whole chess thing all the time. So you need to continue to advance and move forward and utilize the strengths that you have. And Bryson Nesbitt's a kid I think has a chance to have a phenomenal year next year. He is a grade A athlete and he's got moxie. He's very confident. He's a smart dude. I think he's going to be someone that Carolina fans are really going to like by middle of the season next year. And they're going to put him in positions to make things happen. I like what Max said about the running backs. He's putting pressure on them. He's going to the media to put pressure on those kids because some of them are in sort of a sink or swim situation. DJ Jones is a really talented kid, but he's got to stay healthy. And Mac has emphasized before, staying healthy. Basically, staying healthy is sort of a skill, right? It's an attribute. Guys that get hurt a lot don't have as much value as guys that don't ever get hurt. I think Elijah Green, people like that, it's time for them to step up. Hampton comes in the summer, so he won't be there this spring, but Pettaway's going to be there. There's going to be a lot of competition at that spot. You've got Hood back. You've
British
got
Brooks as well,
who played very well the last couple of games of last year, got an opportunity to come back again and maybe see what he can do with his football career. So there is some talent there. There's certainly options, but they need 3 guys to step forward. With respect to the offensive line, I'm glad that Mac said, look, it wasn't just the pass blocking that was a problem, because we talked about that every week, Jacob. Dina, Baran, and I did a podcast a few weeks ago where I went back over it. Look, guys, there's certain things that people need to understand about pass blocking. Your average run blocker, your road grader sometimes isn't going to be a really good pass blocker if he's not athletic enough. I think they have a little bit more athletic line. Bringing in a couple of veteran kids makes them a little bit better up front, I believe. But also, Max said Tuesday, they've got to look at how they call plays. And they put themselves in positions to have to deal with the onslaught. I went back and looked at every sack. I studied every sack that they had last year. I did this back in January. And it was amazing how many of them were 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s. And they ended up punting on, 4th and 18, that kind of thing. Well, when it's 3rd and 7, a defense is going to pin the ears back and come after you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really challenging situation to convert the first down. And they had a lot of sacks on 3rd downs. So if you're better on 1st and 2nd down and you're in a 3rd and 2 as opposed to a 3rd and 7, defense can't as much afford to give up a linebacker, because you can hit him with a gap play or something like that, not only get a first down, but get to the second level of the defense. So they want to be better on 1st and 2nd down and try to avoid those 3rd down situations. Now, not all the sacks were on 3rd down, and not all the sacks were because of play calls. Sam held on to the ball too long sometimes. Max said that they're going to roll the quarterbacks a little bit more. They're going to move them out. I think that with the strengths, and we'll get to this in a second, a little bit more, but with the strengths of Drake May and Criswell and Connor Harrell and even Jefferson Boaz, maybe they have the ability to kind of roll out a little bit more and make plays than Sam did. And Sam last year tucked it and ran a lot because that's what they kind of needed. And it's not a dig on Sam at all, obviously. I just think that you play the guy's strengths, right? They played to Sam's strengths. If it's Drake May, he has a little bit different skill set and strength set than Sam did. So you play to it. Better athlete than Sam. So you play to it. So I also think it takes some of the stress off the offensive line. And it can throw off if a team's going to blitz up the middle and you're rolling your quarterback right away, then that blitz isn't going to work unless that dude's just supremely fast, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have the quarterback just catching the shotgun pass, 2 or 3 step drop, if at all, and he's just going through his progression right there, everybody knows where he is. The defensive rush, whether it's a blitz or whatever else that they employ, is designed to get the quarterback at that spot. Maybe move him a little bit and there's someone else there. But if they're moving right away, it throws a lot of that stuff off. So Max said that they have got to limit the sacks. He's taken more responsibility for that moving forward. It is, you probably have it written on the walls in there. They probably have it sounding all over the place. Must limit sacks. And there are a lot of ways to do that. It's not just the offensive line being better at pass protection. There are a lot of things that go into it. I think that that's going to be one of the more interesting things to see in spring practice, how they think that they're doing with that. Because I believe that Mac will be very honest about it. If they have a couple of scrimmages and the quarterbacks are getting clobbered, he's going to tell us that they're getting clobbered, because he's going to put that back on those other kids. Mac's really good at communicating to his team with certain things through the media. And I think we saw him do a lot of that on Tuesday.
Yeah, no, he is. He's an elite level person for doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Follow his spring practice press conferences hard, because you'll get some good stuff out of those in terms of what he's telling you. Yeah. Building off of that, I mean, biggest thing probably Carolina fans are wondering, and probably the biggest question mark for the Tar Heels going into the spring practice and next year as a whole, is the quarterback battle. It's the fourth thing I want to hit on. I mean, obviously it's Drake May versus Jacoby Criswell. Now you've got Connor Harrell in there. Jefferson Boaz Mac Brown said they will get a shot to prove that they can be the starters, just as you do with any other quarterback in your room. It's a fair shot when it comes to starting spring ball. But I think most of us know and expect it to really be, in terms of the two guys that are really vying for it, Drake May and Jacoby Criswell. We haven't really had a quarterback battle since Mac's first year, AJ, when that was the talk of the town when it came to spring practice. Who was going to start? Was Sam Howell going to get the nod as a freshman against South Carolina? Blah, 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 blah. We're kind of back to it now, trying to figure out, obviously, with Sam headed to the NFL. One thing that stood out for me in terms of Mac talking about the quarterback battle is a quote from him. So they're going to be really hard on them and put them in difficult situations during spring, which I think they need to do. I think Max said they done an okay job of that in the past, but they want to be better at really testing these guys, not just in the quarterback room, but all around the board, putting them in difficult positions, putting them in difficult spots, which will come up to in games. How do they react? How do they What do they do to get out of these situations? Can they make a play when, odds are stacked up against them? And that's one thing that he really wants to focus on with the quarterback battle during spring ball. So, I mean, that's what everybody wants to talk about. That's going to be what we're really following heavily because, with any good team, with any high-level football team, you go as your quarterback go. And if you don't have a guy back there that can get it done for you, you're going to struggle. So I think the quarterback battle is going to be a very, very interesting thing to follow in spring practice and probably going into the fall as well.
No doubt. And I like the fact that he wants to stress them because that's what the position's all about, man.
Yeah.
If you can't handle the stress, then go play somewhere
shouldn't play
else.
Quarterback guy.
Yeah. If you're not nimble and you can't handle the stress, then you're not playing quarterback. So,
no.
And they're also consider the fact that Criswell, let's say Criswell's a starting quarterback against Florida A&M. It will have essentially been almost 3 years since he had taken a lot of live reps in a game, except the Wofford game, right? He played some, I guess, Western Carolina, wherever it was, a couple of years ago. But,
yeah, he's seen the field.
And the same thing for Drake. I mean, it's been a while since those guys had seen a lot of live fire. The Wofford game was one, and you have to count it because Wofford is better than, West Mecklenburg, right? But it's still not where they need them to be. They need them to see something else. So I think utilizing the spring to really stress those kids and see how they handle it and see how they improve. So let's say practice number 5, they throw all kinds of stuff at the quarterbacks and they're going to grade the film and see how they handle it. Practice number 10, maybe they throw the same stuff at them. Who's made the most progress? Who's handling? Who's picking up things a little bit quicker? Because as Max said Tuesday, one of them's been in the program for 2 years. The other one's been in the program for a year. It's time to put up. Now it's time. Yeah. It's their chance. It's their opportunity. You're not too young when you've been in the program for a full year. It's ready to play in college football. You got the goods. You got to get out there on the field and play. So they're going to put those guys through as much as they possibly can. I think it's a wise thing. Mac also said they don't plan on naming a starter until the fall. They're going to handle it very much like they did a couple of years ago when Sam ended up beating out Jace Ruder and Cade Fortin, and Fortin left late in fall camp that year, and he's bounced around a couple of times since. I don't anticipate. I'm not going to go anywhere about if a guy may leave or something like that. I think that they want to give these guys all the time possible, not just spring practice, Jacob, but the summer is really important.
It's
the
huge,
coaches can't watch the summer, but it's really important. Who steps forward? Who's the leader? Who's the guy that when the coaching staff isn't watching, although the strength people and some others, I guess, could be out there, but who's the guy that's calling the dudes up, that's sending the text and saying, okay, let's go. And let's say you have Criswell versus May and these 7-on-7s in the summer and stuff. Who wins? Because there'll be kids that'll be reporting back to Mac and along go, okay, boy, man, Drake did this, Drake did that. Criswell did this, Criswell did that. That's going to be an interesting process. I kind of have my sneaky suspicion who I think is ultimately going to be the quarterback. And I don't know if the staff does or not. A lot of people believe that they do. I don't think so. I think that would be a dangerous approach for the staff.
Yeah.
They know I think they have in their mind what each player's high end is, but it's up to the player to approach that high end. And whoever comes closest to approaching their high end is going to be the guy that gets the job. And by the way, don't sleep on Connor Harrell. I don't think he's going to step in and start or anything like that, but he's another guy where Dina is telling me, Andrew, he's so underrated. And every guy she's ever said that about and has been adamant about saying that, she's been right every time. And she's saying that about Connor Harrell. And she also loves Jefferson Boaz too, by the way. A kid who is damn good high school athlete, and he's got length and all that kind of stuff. There are a lot of programs. If he's the 4th guy next October, there are a lot of programs that would love to have someone like him as their 3rd or 4th quarterback.
Absolutely.
It's going to be fun watching them in camp. People cannot rush to judgment. When we put out some clips for practice, and we'll be at the first practice, and if we get into a couple others, we put out some clips. Don't overanalyze it. And that's what fans want to do. Don't overanalyze it. Allow this process to take its course. And I think it's good that the staff's giving them, each player, about 5 months. You got March, April, May, June, July, August, 6 months. They got 6 months to win the job. And they'll track where they are March 1st and where are they August 10th or 12th when they'll probably name a starter. It's going to be fun.
Definitely. It is. It's always fun to kind of cover those QB battles. It was fun covering it Sam's freshman year. It's just fun to kind of look at the guys, watch them, who's playing better, kind of guess and figure out what's going to happen. So that one's always
QB battles from a journalistic standpoint. I'll give a little sneak look into this. QB battles are the lowest hanging fruit there is.
Yeah. It's easy to write about that stuff.
It's the lowest hanging fruit, but it's also fun because it is the most important position. They're only, the most important positions in sports. You got goalie in hockey, pitcher in baseball, quarterback in football.
100%, yeah.
You can't win big if you have a bad quarterback.
No, you cannot. Just any level of football. I don't care what level of football you're playing. If you got a bad quarterback, you're not going to last very long. So obviously we'll be covering that very hard during spring ball and obviously in the summer and fall. So we'll see what happens, but going to be a fun one nonetheless. AJ, last thing I want to hit on real quickly, getting back to the basics. You actually put out a story on Tuesday, kind of quickly after Mac Brown's press conference, and just kind of hitting on what that means exactly. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because I have read your piece. You wrote the piece, though. I want to ask you kind of what getting back to the basics in Mac Brown's eyes look like. But I want to read real quickly a quote because I think it's not only getting back to the basics from a player perspective, but a coaching perspective as well. One quote that's in your piece that did stand out was from Mac right here. He said, "We didn't do a great job last year, I don't think, as a staff or as a team of getting ready to play every week, of playing up to the standard we had the previous 2 years." Pretty damning quote from Mac Brown, looking back in hindsight in terms of his evaluation, not only, like I said, from a player perspective and a team perspective, but from a coaching perspective as well. So AJ, when Mac talks about getting back to the basics, what exactly does he mean by that?
Well, I think there's several things that fit into that. Number one, and he said, we got to play with a chip on our shoulder. When he got there, they had 5 wins in 2 years, the previous 2 years. And that was an easy sell. Rally the kids around that. Nobody thinks you're worth the crap. They don't think I should be here and I'm too old and you can never go home again, all that kind of junk. And it was an easy sell, and they went 7-6. They had to win their last 3. So they had to win the last 2 games to get to a bowl. And they ended up going 7-6. They routed Temple in the bowl game. Hugely positive year. Then in 2020, they ended up 8-4 in the COVID year, and they went to the Orange Bowl, and they're ahead of Texas A&M in the fourth quarter. They're leading in the Orange Bowl in the fourth quarter. And I think maybe it was too fast in some respects. We talked about that some last year. And they were one of the darlings of the offseason. Mac did 1,000 interviews, and people, I wrote a piece saying they're way ahead of schedule because heading into the Virginia Tech game, they were. But things didn't turn out the way that they anticipated. And I think Mac warned us some in the preseason that maybe we're not as good as people think we are, paraphrasing from Mac. But I don't think anybody anticipated 6-7. I don't think anybody anticipated the defense just blowing up as it did. I don't think anybody anticipated some of the turnover issues that Sam had in a couple of games. And then I think more than anything, if you're Mac Brown and you're sitting in a conference room with your staff, and the thing that was most perplexing, and he says it still is a little bit befuddling to him now, is the fact that they weren't ready at a certain level every week. Mm-hmm. Not every team's going to be right here every week. It's humanly impossible. Human nature finds its way onto the sports fields and courts all the time, just like they do in our lives. And so it's there all the time. However, Mac said, the Virginia Tech game, that was bad. And I even asked him about let me go back for a second. He said that the problem that they had that throughout the course of the year, not being able to really get juiced up a lot and some of the things they went through. I asked him how much the Virginia Tech game and the manner that they lost when they went in was so much hype and so much excitement, so much anticipation. And Virginia Tech came out in the first quarter and said, boom, screw that. That ain't you guys. And they recovered a little bit in that game and had a chance late. And then the pass protection and Sam making that poor pass, should have just thrown the ball out or taken the sack, whatever. That ended up being a loss, I think, that kind of hurt them the rest of the way. But Mac said it was even more, it was the Georgia Tech game. He said that they laid an egg, and he still doesn't understand how that happened. He cannot put a finger on why and how that happened. They couldn't move the ball in the first half, turned it over 3 times inside their own 50. They played well defensively in the first half, but then Georgia Tech puts Jeff Sims in. Jeremiah Gemmel said that they didn't prepare for Jeff Sims, which to me was the second red flag. about Jay Bateman and how things were progressing or not there, and that's defensively, and they got routed. They got routed by a horrible team. Mm-hmm. And Mac, I think basically what Mac said was they didn't recover from that. They played well at times, but they did not handle in-game adversity well, kind of like the basketball team has dealt with.
Yeah, very similar.
They don't deal with in-game adversity well. And the football team, especially on defense, didn't handle it well at all. And Mac said the other thing is that's leadership. They didn't have the kind of leadership they anticipated. So one other change that they're making, which I think is very noteworthy, is that the leadership council that was previously appointed by the coaching staff before spring practice, they're not going to do that until after spring. Mm-hmm. Max says, you go out and earn in the field. You want to be in the leadership. And I think they're going to make it a little bit smaller too. I had 21 guys maybe before. They're going to make the leadership council a little bit smaller. You can have too many voices in a room.
Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm.
So maybe you need to have fewer voices, and the voices need to be better, stronger, and resonate more. And I think that's one of the changes they're making. So going back to the basics is chip on the shoulder. I think bringing in Chizik with his defense, simplifying things, I think that's part of it. And but they have to. One other thing too. There's so much running through my mind. We had 57 minutes of Mac, and you can only imagine what Mac says in 57 minutes. Yeah, Mac gives
you a lot of info.
I think accountability. I also think maybe, not so much buddy stuff. Mm-hmm. Little more of a little bit of a harder edge in the program,
raising the standard a little bit. You know what I mean?
Raising the standard, but having less tolerance for not meeting the standard.
Yeah.
Having a little bit more of an edge. So, like, you got to be. It's a physical sport. You can only hug so much and get the job done. Sometimes you got to kick a guy in the rear. Sometimes you've got to make an example of him. Sometimes you got to bench him. So I think we'll see a little bit more of that. Mm-hmm. I think that's what that means. And I think it's a good thing because, look, we were there. We're watching all those games last year. I'm in every game. I look down and sometimes look on the field, and I didn't see the same kind of pop in pre-snap that sometimes I saw from the teams they were playing.
Yeah.
And that's got to change, because if you're not ready at the snap, it doesn't matter how fast you are. It doesn't matter how aggressive you are. It doesn't matter how physically strong you are. If you lose a split second on the snap, you're going to lose the snap. Mm-hmm. And they've got to get rid of all that crap so they don't have any interference in pre-snap. They had a lot of mental junk in pre-snap last year. The Thursday before a game, I think it was all the time. Max said he didn't have fun last year. He said he had a lot of fun the first 2 years, didn't have fun. He wants to have fun again. And by the way, he also said that he not keeping his bowl gear.
Yeah, I heard that. That was a good quote.
Because he's not proud of that. So I think Mac's a little angry. He didn't come out of retirement for this crap. He came out of retirement to get the program back on track and to do something big there. I think Mac Brown, people used to call him Mr. February or whatever the heck it was, because of signing day and everything, because he's a great recruiter. And even with a national title, some people said, well, he had Vince Young. Of course he won a title, which is a stupid thing to say, because one player doesn't win you a national title in football. No, I think there's part of Mac that probably thinks, you know what, I'm not as respected as I should be, because look at Texas football in the 18 years before Mac got there, and look at it since.
Hasn't been great.
Texas football has only been nationally relevant during Mac Brown's tenure in the last 40 years.
That is a fact too. Yeah,
that's a fact. And he doesn't get enough credit for that. Mm-hmm. People like to focus on the last few years he was there instead of looking at all those 11-win seasons. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he won a national title and played another one. I think deep down, he knows college football history very well. He appreciates it. He's a consumer of it. When he talks about Darryl Roy, you could see the gleam. When he talks about his dad telling him about Darryl Roy, you could see the gleam. I think Mac would love to kind of stick it to some of these naysayers by doing something big time at North Carolina, something that the only other person that's done it before was, in the last 38 years, 40 years, him. He had it headed in that direction. Now he'd like to get it back there. So I think there's a lot of that going on.
I thought it was too. I thought that was pretty evident in his press conference. I thought he said he was pretty matter of fact and pretty stern with some of the things he was saying, which we've seen at times, but not necessarily before spring ball, maybe in the past. I don't know if I've seen him like that same energy. Yeah, you kind of see it in his eyes.
Jacob,
the way he was talking.
I'm going to tell any Carolina fan that I know some got tired of listening to him last season because they're losing. That's what happens with coaches. When teams win, the views on the videos on the press conferences go way up. When they lose, they go way down.
Yeah, when they lose.
Carolina football fans need to watch the entire press conference. There were a lot of great questions, and Mac's intro was 23 minutes, his opening statement, because he went through the gamut of the whole team. Mm-hmm. But there's some good stuff in there. I think Carolina fans will be very pleased. I enjoyed it. I like seeing a little bit of that edge from him.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Mac will hug you. Mac will give you a great hug. He's a great hugger, right? Mm-hmm. But I think Mac Brown can also kick you in the tail a little bit too. And I think bringing in Chizik's a different personality than Bateman. Bateman's a little bit more of a joker. Everybody's a nickname. Chizik's a little bit more straightforward. You know, we're going to do the job or you're not going to play, that kind of thing. So yeah. I think the program's going to take on a little bit more of that mentality moving forward.
Definitely. Spring ball fast approaching, AJ, starting next Tuesday, March 1st. And obviously wrapping up with the spring game on April 9th in Keenan Stadium. That'll be a 3 p.m. kickoff for that game. Still a long ways away from that. But
we will be at the first practice.
Yep.
We have basketball the night before. So I'll get home about 1 and I'll finish work about 2:30 or 3. I'll sleep about 3 hours, get up, drive Chapel Hill, 8 a.m. practice.
Early morning practices right there, man.
As soon as I got used to the overlap not being a part of my life, the overlap
crept back in your life, didn't it? Yeah.
Overlaps here. Football never goes away.
No, it doesn't. It really does not. Football will follow you around like a shadow. It never fully goes away. It's always lingering there. So, but it's going to be fun one to cover. Spring ball is always good to cover. It's always interesting to cover. Plenty of storylines, plenty of things to watch out for, plenty of things that we'll be covering, and plenty of content that we'll be pumping out from spring ball all the way through. So make sure you guys keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com. If you want to get more of that content that you can't get unless you're signed up, you can sign up for just $8.33 a month by clicking the link in the description below, hitting the sign up button. Great time to do so. It's just $8, $8.33. And think about buying me and AJ a couple cheap beers a month. You know, it's not bad at all. So that's how I look at it. You know, a couple $4 beers. That's all I need.
What is it? I haven't ordered a Michelob Ultra at a bar in years. What does a Michelob Ultra go for now? About $4?
I mean, yeah, $3.50, $4. Yeah. So that's all it is right there, man. That's all.
I'm good with a couple, and you guys are good with a couple too, right?
Exactly, man. Just think of it a couple.
You drink that IPA stuff, don't you?
Yeah. See, I'd like to dabble in that. Then you're getting up in the the $6, sometimes $7 range. So we're not talking IPAs here. That's a little bit too expensive.
My
for that right there.
Eddie Murray IPA I got at an Orioles game last year was $12. I took one sip, went in the bathroom, poured it down the drain, rinsed it out. I went back in the line and got a Bud Light or something like that. And the woman's like, "You drank it that fast?" I said, "No."
Yeah, he said that ain't for me. That ain't for me. I could have told you it wouldn't be for you. It's not for everybody. Let's put it that way.
No, I've tried it before and I just can't go that route.
I don't. It's an acquired taste to say the least. So like I said, think of it like buying me and AJ, whoever you want to put it. AJ and Dina, AJ and Kevin, a couple cheap beers every month for the $8.33 subscription. We're not asking for too much.
Kevin's a cheap beer guy, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's drinking the $3.50.
Yeah. If you can find Milwaukee's best light somewhere, Kevin will probably be happy with that.
Be all over that. So if you want to support us,
it's a blast from the past, by the way.
Yes, it is right there. Yes, it is big time right there. If you want to get some extra content as well, got to sign up, got to be a premium member, get access to our awesome community over here in our message boards as well. Do it. Link in the description below, $8.33 a month. Also, shout out real quickly again to our podcast sponsor, The Rogue Shop. Check them out at The Rogue Shop, if I can get that out, .com. Use the promo code TarHeels10 to save. But you guys know the drill. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. This has been 5 things to look out for in spring practice for Carolina football. Like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. We're getting close to 10K, AJ. I think we're only about 700 away now. We're going to hit that 10K. Now. Less than 700 now. I'm telling you guys, it's coming up. We want to hit it before the end of basketball season, but I think we can get it. I'm pretty confident we'll get it. So keep sharing, keep subscribing if you haven't already. If you're watching our videos consistently and you haven't subscribed yet, I don't know what you're doing. Hit that subscribe button so you know, and hit that notification bell as well so you know every single time we upload, and we do upload a lot this time of year especially. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks.